So for number one, connective tissue cell that produces vasoactive substances, which can affect the function of the microvascular system and control the flow of blood through the tissue. So fibroblasts, mast cells, macrophage, neutrophilic granulocytes, or lymphocytes. Excuse me. Produces vasoactive substances, affects the function of the microvascular system. Mahuhulaan nyo, you know the function of the macrophage. You know what neutrophils are. You know what fibroblasts are, lymphocytes. So if you don't know mast cells but you know the rest, edi mast cell, diba? So the answer here is letter B, mast cells. So basically, mast cells are known to regulate the vasodilation. They regulate the vasodilation, vascular homeostasis. Okay, it is also involved in your innate and adaptive immune response, which we have discussed last time. Okay, so basically, they generate and release um, different molecules, okay, such as your histamine, proteases, prostanoids, and leukotrienes and heparin. Okay, so histamines, we have discussed that already, or I have mentioned that last time during our discussion in pathogenesis. So to have a more understanding on the mast cells and histamine, I have a short video here which you can watch. Okay, so tell me if you can hear if my audio. Wait lang.
Histamine, friend or foe, or frenemy. From NIH Medline Plus magazine. Histamine. Is it the most annoying chemical in the body?
Plant.
It's the stuff that allergies are made of. Hay fever, food allergies, skin allergies. Histamine plays a big role in all of them. And those conditions play a big role in us. In 2015, CDC data showed that more than 8% of US adults had hay fever. More than 5% of US children had food allergies, and at least 12% of all US kids had skin allergies. So what's the deal? Why do we have such a pesky chemical in our body? Well, histamine is usually our friend. Histamine is a signaling molecule sending messages between cells. It tells stomach cells to make stomach acid. And it helps our brain stay awake. You may have seen this effect illustrated by medicines that block histamine. Some antihistamines can make us sleepy, and other antihistamines are used to treat acid reflux. Histamine also works with our immune system. It helps protect us from foreign invaders. When the immune system discovers an invader, immune cells called B cells make IgE antibodies. The IgEs are like wanted signs that spread throughout the body, telling other immune cells about specific invaders to look for. Eventually, mast cells and basophils pick up the IgEs and become sensitized. When they come in contact with the target invader, they spew histamine and other inflammatory chemicals. Blood vessels become leakier, so that white blood cells and other protective substances can sneak through and fight the invader. Histamine's actions are great for protecting the body against parasites. But with allergies, the immune system overreacts to harmless substances, not parasites. This is when histamine becomes our foe. Common allergens include peanuts, pollen, and animal dander. Leaky vessels cause tearing in eyes, congestion in the nose, and swelling basically anywhere. Histamine works with nerves to produce itching. In food allergies, it can cause vomiting and diarrhea. And it constricts muscles in the lungs, making it harder to breathe. Most worrisome is when histamine contributes to anaphylaxis, a severe reaction that is potentially fatal. Swollen airways can prevent breathing, and a rapid drop in blood pressure could starve organs of vital blood. So what can be done about histamine? Antihistamines block cells from seeing histamine and can treat common allergies. Medicines like steroids can calm the inflammatory effects of allergies, and anaphylaxis needs to be treated with a shot of epinephrine, which opens up airways and increases blood pressure. So our relationship with histamine is complicated. We can do better. NIH, and specifically the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, support research of histamine and its related conditions. Great progress is being made in understanding allergy triggers and managing allergic symptoms, and figuring out why histamine, our frenemy, acts the way it does.
Okay. Wait lang ha, mag-headset lang. Okay, so let's now go to number 2. Number 2, which of the following is most likely to cause gingival recession? We have occlusal trauma, systemic disease, toothbrush abrasion, necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis. We've answered this question yesterday. So the answer is tama, letter C, toothbrush abrasion. Okay, we have here several terms. We have abrasion, abfraction, erosion, and also attrition. Okay, and I'm sure you're familiar with these terms already. So when we say abrasion, so these are wear produced by interaction between teeth and other materials. So it's a wear of the tooth from foreign element against a tooth. Example is your toothbrush abrasion. Diba? Horizontally brushing the patient, then your teeth would have this uh, abrasion here. Okay? Abfraction, on the other hand, the difference between abrasion is that abfraction is an angular notch. Okay, it's an angular notch along the gum line. So basically, this forms if the patient is grinding, clenching, okay, biting. Okay, so these are bending forces applied on the tooth. Okay, um, you would notice that abfraction, angular, straight like that. Okay? But in your abrasion, ayan, pa-C-shape siya. Okay? Erosion, on the other hand, these are dissolution of hard tissue by acidic substances. Okay? So chemical wear on our teeth from either acids. Okay? Mahilig ka sa acidic food or stomach acid. Okay? Vomiting. Right? Attrition, on the other hand, attrition is a wear, okay, through tooth to tooth, okay, contact. Okay, you would notice this on patients that the cusp tips are abraded, flattened yung cusp tips of the patients. Okay, the incisal edges, okay, they are also worn out. Okay, so that is attrition. Number 3, antigen presenting cells for lymphocytes. Or antigen presenting cells for lymphocytes. Langerhans, melanocytes, Merkels, keratinocytes, none of the above. You should only have 2 choices here. Dalawa lang dapat yung pagpipilian ninyo. Of course, you will not be answering D, di ba? You will not be answering C. You will not be answering B. Because most likely, you should know the function of this. Your only choice is either letter A or letter E. And the answer here would be letter A, Langerhans cells. Okay? So basically, antigen presenting cells, we've talked about this last time under the topic pathogenesis, innate and adaptive immunity. Okay? So antigen presenting cells are a group of immune cells that mediate the cellular immune response of the body. Okay, what we've talked about last time are the B cells. Okay, B cells are an example of antigen presenting cells. What else? Other examples of your antigen presenting cells would be your macrophages. Okay, macrophages. Then you also have your Langerhans cells. These are just some of the examples of your antigen presenting cells. Do not confuse Langerhans cells from your Langhans giant cells. These are different. Magkaiba yung Langerhans from Langhans. Okay? Islets of Langerhans is also different. Okay? Islets of Langerhans is in the pancreas. Okay? So Langhans giant cells, these are large cells found in granulomatous conditions, just like your tuberculosis. Okay? Syphilis. You also find Langhans giant cells in leprosy. Okay? Sarcoidosis. And in some fungal infections. Okay? So these are granulomatous conditions. Okay? As I've mentioned earlier, Langerhans cells, this has immunologic function. Okay? These ones we will be discussing on the succeeding questions. Okay? Number 4, responsible for the synthesis of melanin. This is very easy. Giveaway question. Langerhans, melanocytes, Merkel's, keratinocytes, none of the above. So the answer would be melanocytes, melanin, melan. Okay. So melanin production is the basic function of melanocyte. Okay. We have a condition in which the skin loses its pigment cells or melanocytes. And what do you call that condition? The skin loses its color, the skin loses its pigment. Albinism, what else? It's like Michael Jackson. What do you call that? That there are patches in the skin that would lose its color. We call that condition. Starts with letter V. Vitiligo. Okay. Number 5, identified as tactile perceptors of the gingival epithelium. So we have discussed melanocytes already, have discussed Langerhans, and we have 3 choices here. Tactile perceptors. Of course, the answer is letter and answer. Letter C, okay, Merkel cells. So Merkel cells are sensory, okay, and they respond to touch, okay. They are found right below the epidermis, okay. Number 6, the principal cell type of the gingival epithelium. Of course, the answer is obvious here, okay. It's the keratinocytes, okay. Keratinocytes basically are the most prominent cell within the epidermis, okay? And it is essential for skin repair, okay? Our skin has 3 layers. You have your epidermis, you have your dermis, and you have your hypodermis or the subcutaneous tissue, okay? Your hypodermis is made of fat and connective tissue, okay? Your dermis is where the hair follicles, okay, are found, hair follicles, and sweat glands. It lies beneath the epidermis. And of course, the outermost layer of the skin is your epidermis, outermost layer. Okay. It provides waterproof barrier and it creates our skin tone also. Okay. So just review on your own time the different layers. Divide the stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, spinosum, okay, basale. Okay. So just try to recall that. I'm sure you've had a review on that in your histology. Okay. Number seven, connective tissue cell that is engaged in the production of various types of fibers found in the connective tissue, but is also instrumental in the synthesis of connective tissue matrix. Synthesis of connective tissue. Okay. Of course, the answer is fibroblast. Okay. Dali lang siya. So fibroblast basically is a type of cell that contributes to the formation of connective tissue. Formation of connective tissue. It is a fibrous cellular material that supports and connects other tissues or organs in the body. Mast cells, on the other hand, they contain granules, di ba? So these are mast cells. They contain granules and they tend to release these granules or they granulate. Okay, once they interact with a specific pathogen, they would release some of the granules like histamine, heparin, and others, which has its own function. Okay? Macrophage, these are involved in phagocytosis. Okay? Phagocytosis, engulfing of the bacteria and other ano ba, harmful organisms. Okay? Next, we have here the neutrophilic granulocyte. Okay? Neutrophilic granulocyte or basically neutrophil. Okay? Neutrophil, as you already know, is a type of your white blood cell. And the other term for your white blood cell is your leukocyte. And we have different types of white blood cells. You have your never let monkey eat banana. Diba? You have your neutrophil, lymphocyte, monocyte, eosinophil, and basophil. And among these different white blood cells here, or among these different leukocytes here, is the neutrophil that is the most numerous. Most numerous. Pinakamadami. Okay? While the least numerous is your basophil. Okay? So this is already arranged from the most numerous to the least numerous. Then we have also here, these white blood cells are further grouped into either granulocytes or agranulocyte. Okay? When you say granulocyte, they contain granules within their cytoplasm. When you say agranulocyte, it has a clear cytoplasm. They don't have granules inside the cytoplasm. Okay, so this one is just like your histamine, mast cells. Okay, so like your mast cells. Okay, they have their granules. So for the granulocyte, our mnemonic for this is Ben. Okay, Ben. So basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil, these are your granulocytes. Okay, while your agranulocytes your lymphocytes and your monocytes. Okay, I've mentioned earlier that white blood cells, the other name is leukocytes. Okay, para you're not confused, associate this with leukemia. Okay, it's a disease in the white blood cells. I have a new different white blood cells here. So neutrophil, basically, the main action is against bacterial and fungal infection. Okay. bacterial and fungal infection. Okay? Same as in your monocyte, okay? Bacterial and fungal. Lymphocytes, on the other hand, the main action is against viral infection. Okay? Eosinophil, do you know sa eosinophil? If you have elevated eosinophil, what does it mean? May alaga ka. May alaga yun. Parasite. Tama. Okay? So the main action is against parasitic infection. Okay? And basophil is responsible for responses to allergens. Okay? Responses to allergens. So I have mentioned lymphocyte already. It's part of your white blood cells. Okay? Any questions so far? Mabilis ba? Intindihan niyo naman sulat ko na sinasabi ko naman. Kaya niyo na yan. Okay? So, number 8. Connective tissue cell that has phagocytic and synthetic function. Okay? Derived from circulating blood monocytes. Ayan, no? Yung keyword ninyo. Diba? Pag nabasa niyo yan, if you read that word, you already know the answer. The phagocytic or engulfing. So, letter C. Macrophage. Okay? It's macrophage. So, we have all of this earlier. I try to read the questions carefully. You can get some cues, okay, this question in terms of answer, okay. Fibers that are considered as the most essential of the periodontium. So what is the most essential component of the periodontium? Is it the collagen fibers, reticulin, oxytalan, or elastin? Of course, it's letter A, correct. Collagen fibers. Okay. So we have here the different types of connective tissue fibers. You have your collagen, reticulin, oxytalan, and elastic fibers. As I mentioned earlier, collagen is the most essential component of the periodontium. Okay. Reticulin fibers, these are located near the blood vessels. Okay. Oxytalan naman is located in the apical region. Okay. They're scarce in gingiva, konti lang sa gingiva, but numerous in periodontal ligament. Okay. Scarce in gingiva, but numerous in the PDL or periodontal ligament. Elastic fibers are only present in association with the blood vessels. Okay. Number 10. GCF or your gingival crevicular fluid is believed to cleanse material from the sulcus, contain plasma proteins, exert antibody activity to defend the bacteria, enhance the nerve endings, possess antimicrobial properties. Number 1, is this true? Cleanse the material from the sulcus? Yes. Contain plasma proteins that may improve adhesion of the epithelium to the tooth. Is this true? It's also true. Exert antibody activity. Yes. Enhance the nerve endings of the PDL for better tactile perception. Does it affect the nerve endings? GCF? No. Diba? possess antimicrobial property? Does it have antimicrobial property? Yes. So the answer would be an answer. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. Letter D. Letter D. 1, 2, 3, 5. Another way of answering this type of question is, let's say you are sure that the answer has, hindi eh, kasi yung choices ko ang dami masyado. Diba? Pero you can eliminate. Okay? Let's say number 1 is not included. You can start eliminating from the choices. Okay? Number 11. Periodontal ligament, connective tissue that surrounds the root and connects it to the bone, has the shape of an hourglass and its narrowest at the mid-root level, distributes the force elicited during mastication, essential for mobility of the teeth. Okay? Have you heard of Wells? Wells, reviewer. It's a reviewer for the board exam. Wells, Reed and Cowrie. Yellow and gray. So if you try to read Wells, it has 2 volumes. It would have a very concise explanation. Then at the end of each topic, you would answer several questions. And the questions that you would be answering there are questions like this. Ganyan siya. Kaya nakakapagod. It's very tiring. I don't know. I hate this question. Kayo din ba? Do you hate this type of question? Nakakapagod siya, di ba? It's very tiring to answer these questions. Anyway, so let's answer this. Periodontal ligament. Is it essential for mobility of the teeth? Periodontal ligament. Yes, di ba? You have physiologic mobility. Okay? So 4 is true. So since 4 is true, we can eliminate letter A. Okay? We can also eliminate letter D. Okay? Let's try to check 3. Distributes the force elicited during mastication. Is this true? Tama ba yan? Yes, di ba? So since 3 is true, you can eliminate letter C. That's how you can answer. Okay? Then, let's try to check 1. Connective tissue that surrounds the root and connects it to the bone. Also true. 1 is true, so you can eliminate. So you already have the answer. Letter E. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So that's how you can answer. Try to find one statement that you are sure. Okay? Then try to eliminate here. In terms of the periodontal ligaments, we have already mentioned and discussed this yesterday. Okay? Yeah, it's the same slide. So what do you call the procedure again wherein you're cutting onto the collar, cutting onto these transeptal fibers, preventing the tooth from derotating again, preventing the tooth from relapse after ortho? You would be getting a blade, you would cut around. Edwards technique, CSF, circumferential, supracrestal fibrotomy. Okay. In terms of the sharpest fibers, we mentioned that sharpest fibers would periodontal ligaments would insert into the bone and into the cementum. Okay, you call those sharpest fibers. Which one is thicker? The sharpest fibers in the bone or sharpest fibers in the cementum? Thicker, mas makapal. The one inserted in the bone is thicker compared to the cementum. Right? 12. Sickle scalers and curettes should be kept sharp for the following reason. Better removal of deposit, reduced fatigue of the operator, efficient removal of gingival tissue, minimize patient discomfort, come up with correct diagnosis for the case, improve operator tactile sensitivity. Better for removal of deposit. Is this true? Yes. So one is true. What about number two? Reduce operator fatigue. So it makes your procedure more efficient, di ba? So it's also true. Efficient for removal of gingival tissue. Is this true? No, di ba? You don't use sickle scaler to remove gingival tissue. Minimize patient discomfort. Is this true? Yes, if it's sharp, then it's easier for you to remove the deposit, okay? So reduces patient discomfort. Come up with the correct diagnosis for the case. Do you use sickle scalers and curettes to arrive at your diagnosis? Let's say you would be assessing your patient first. Curettes and scalers na ba? No, di ba? Curettes and scalers are used for the treatment proper. Diba? Treatment proper na. You have your diagnosis already. You are now to proceed with the procedure. Okay? So this is wrong. Improved operator tactile sensitivity. Is that true? Yes. So what's the answer? 1, 2, 4, 6. Letter E. Okay, that's the answer. Number 13. These are accumulation of tissue cells and bacteria without an organized structure and may be easily removed without an organized structure. So we know that plaque has an organized matrix, di ba? So, di na yan. We know that plaque, the other term is biofilm. We only have two choices here, debris or materia alba. It says here, tissue cells and bacteria. Okay, so the answer would be letter C, correct? Materia alba. Okay, we have differentiated already yesterday the difference between plaque, debris, and materia alba. Biofilm, that's the other term for your plaque, specifically dental biofilm. Okay. Ano to? Difference between food debris, materia alba, and plaque. So, just in table form. Yan, dislodge readily food debris, dislodged by forceful rinsing, does not dislodge the plaque. Okay, it's adherent. 14. Pellicle formation starts 30 minutes after tooth brushing. In crown areas, it forms because of the glycoproteins present in our food or in our saliva called, what are the glycoproteins present in the saliva? Dextran, mucin, mutan, adhesin, H bond. Hirap ng question, no? The answer here is letter B, mucin. Okay, the answer is letter B, mucin. So we have mentioned yesterday that pellicle, okay, prevents the tooth from desiccation. Basically, it lubricates the tooth surface. Okay, so it serves as a barrier and buffer for the mineralizing agent. Okay, we have here the list again. So mucin, sabi natin, involved in pellicle formation. Dextran is the energy source of bacteria. That's your dextran. Okay. Mutan, it helps in formation of insoluble matrix of plaque. Okay? So involved siya sa matrix, organized matrix. Okay? Then we have adhesin. Adhesin, bacterial adhesion. Involves in bacterial adhesion. H bond basically is a poorer means of adhesion. It's also involved in bacterial adhesion, but it's poorer compared to your adhesins. All right. 15. Subgingival plaque. Puro ganito yung question dito. Plaque that can be found below the gingival margin. Main nutritional component is GCF. Subject to intramural, intraoral abrasion. Okay. Gingival tissue acts as a protective barrier. So let's answer one by one. Subgingival plaque. Plaque that can be found below the gingival margin. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Can we eliminate one here? No. Main nutritional component is the crevicular fluid. Is that true? Subgingival plaque. True ba yun? You have your plaque there. You also have a plaque here. So supragingival plaque, main nutritional component is from the saliva. So what about this one? Below the gingiva, it's not exposed to the saliva. So the main nutritional component of that is the GCF, or gingival crevicular fluid. So that's true. Okay. Subject to intraoral abrasion. Is that correct? Subgingival plaque, ito below the gingiva. Is it subject to intraoral abrasion? Matatamaan ba siya when you eat? No. Diba? Gingival tissue acts as protective barrier. Is it protected by the gingiva? Look at the drawing. Yes. Okay. So the answer is 1, 2, and 4. 1, 2, and 4. Letter C. Okay. 1, 2, and 4. So my question now is, in terms of the supragingival and subgingival plaque, okay, are the bacteria found in supragingival plaque different from the bacteria in the subgingival plaque? Do they have different bacterial components? Are there bacteria present in subgingival plaque that are not found in supragingival plaque? It's the same. It's the same bacteria, but what's the difference? Ano pinagkaiba? If they have the same bacterial component, what's the difference? Presence of oxygen. So difference is the presence of oxygen. What is its effect in the bacteria? Sabi natin, it's the same bacteria. So sige, anaerobe and aerobe. Can you find aerobic bacteria in supragingival plaque? Aerobic. Meron. Can you find aerobic bacteria in subgingival plaque? Sabi nyo kanina, same bacteria. Diba? You mentioned earlier, same bacteria for supragingival, subgingival. And if you cannot find aerobic subgingivally, this is not true. different na siya. You can still find aerobic bacteria here. Same as in your anaerobic bacteria. Kasi nga they have the same bacterial component. Diba? Same bacterial component. If there's pigeons here, there's pigeons here. If there's AA here, there's AA here. If there's Tannerella forsythia here, there's Tannerella forsythia here. Okay? But what's the difference? Why is it that the subgingival plaque more virulent compared to the supragingival plaque? Hindi na disturb. Do you think? It's the same as in your early plaque accumulation and a mature plaque. Same bacterial component. Why is it that once your plaque matures, they can now cause the disease? They can now cause gingivitis. Why is it that during the early stages of plaque development, they cannot cause the disease yet? So in early stages of plaque accumulation, there's already the gram-negative bacteria, same with your gram-positive. So number of bacteria. So they have the same bacterial component. However, in terms of the predominant bacteria, okay, that's a difference. Same here. So early stages of plaque development and mature plaque, okay, both has gram-positive and gram-negative. However, in early stages of plaque development, there are more gram-positive microorganisms. In a mature plaque, there are more gram-negative microorganisms, but still gram-positive is present. Okay, so same here in your supragingival and subgingival plaque. You have the same bacterial component, however, there are more gram-negative, okay, anaerobic bacteria subgingivally. Kasi there is lesser oxygen there. Okay? You get that? Tindihan? Okay? Number 16. Bleeding on probing. So, important indicator of presence of inflammation. Nakapagod talaga answerin yung ganitong question. Does not reveal disease progression. Indicator of presence of periodontitis. Does not indicate possible burst. So, number 1. Important indicator of presence of inflammation. Yes, diba? Earliest sign of inflammation is bleeding on probing. Okay? So number 1 is true. So yay, naka-eliminate tayo ng isa. Does not reveal disease progression. Is that true? Hindi nyo alam. Sige, let's skip. We don't know this. Nakita nyo tuloy answer. Indicator of presence of periodontitis. Does it tell you there's periodontitis? Bleeding on probing. Okay? No. Cannot tell you if there's perio, di ba? What we use to check for periodontitis is the PPD, CAL, okay? The other parameters. So eliminate number 3. Oh, we have the answer already. Letter D, 1, 2, and 4. So that's how you can approach this type of question. If you don't know one, try to find one here, one statement that you're very sure, in which you can eliminate some of the options or choices. Okay?
Hindi yung iniisa-isa na niya siya ng ganun. Kasi nga, kapagod siya, it's too tiring to answer these questions. But still, I am giving you these types of question in the exams. Kasi nga, in the board exam, you will be answering such questions. How do you know how to approach these questions? Okay? Answer is letter D, 1, 2, and 4. O, isa pa ulit. Infrabony pocket. Infrabony pocket. Vertical bone loss in various form. Base of pocket is coronal to the alveolar crest. Remnant of junctional epithelium is persistent. Base of the pocket is apical to alveolar crest. So infrabony pocket. Okay, that's our infrabony pocket. Sabi natin, where is the base of the pocket located? Is it below or above the alveolar crest? It's below. So number 4 is true. Okay, so we can already eliminate number letter E. Okay, what else? Um, Base of the pocket is coronal to the alveolar crest. Is this true? No, kasi ito nga siya, apical siya. Di ba? The number 2 is wrong. So eliminate this one. Okay, so lang. Next is number 1. Okay, vertical bone loss in various forms. Is this an example of vertical bone loss? Yes. Okay. So if it's an angular bone loss, if it's infrabony pocket, it's a type of vertical bone loss. You have here your 1 wall bony defect, 2 wall bony defect, 3 wall bony defect, and others. Okay. So this is true. Number 1 is true. So eliminate mo na to. Okay. So we are left with letter A and letter D. Okay, 1, 3, 4, 1, and 4. You need to know now this one. Remnants of junctional epithelium is persistent. What do you think? What's your guess? Can you find the remnants of the junctional epithelium here in infrabony pocket? When you say remnants of junctional epithelium, okay, so in the presence of ADCs, okay, when the junctional epithelium is destroyed and detached, remnants at the original junctional epithelium can sometimes be found at the base of the periodontal pocket. So this would include your detached and the dead epithelial cells. So where can you find remnants of junctional epithelium? You can only find it in one, either suprabony or infrabony pocket. And the answer is in the suprabony pocket. So remnants of junctional epithelium is only found in the suprabony pocket. Remember that one. Okay? So if this is not true, the answer would be letter D. 1 and 4. Okay? 1 and 4. All right? So we have mentioned this already yesterday. Pseudo pocket and true pocket, suprabony and infrabony pocket. Okay? So in terms of the infrabony pocket, I've mentioned earlier that this would include your 3 wall bony defect, 2 wall bony defect, and 1 wall bony defect. Okay, later we will be discussing this one. Okay, Number 18, theory on periodontitis, which states that there is a direct relationship between the total number of bacteria and the amplitude of the pathogenic effect. The answer here is letter non-specific. Letter E. Letter E siya. Non-specific plaque hypothesis. So let's review these different theory and hypothesis. Okay. So let's begin by discussing. Ito na lang discuss natin. Non-specific, specific, and virulent clonal. So we'll focus on this. So when you say non-specific, non-specific plaque hypothesis, this one is not anymore accepted, basically. Okay, not anymore accepted. The disease happens when the total amount of plaque exceeds the patient's ability to neutralize the harmful product. So basically, what it says is that there is direct relationship between the total number of accumulated bacteria and the intensity of the disease. Okay, so this would imply that plaque cause the disease regardless of its composition. If may plaque daw, there would be a disease, irregardless of the composition of that plaque. Okay? So this focuses on the quantity of plaque. Yun yung focus sa quantity, not the quality of plaque. Okay? Wait lang, ba't dumilim? Wait lang ha, dumilim yung screen ko. Yeah. It focuses on the quantity of plaque and not the quality of plaque. So what did they recommend back then? What's the recommended treatment here? So the recommended treatment here is, of course, total plaque control. Okay? So thorough oral prophylaxis, toothbrushing. So yeah, okay, there's plaque. Let's remove all the plaque. We don't want plaque. Regardless of the composition, you don't want plaque. Total plaque control. Okay. Next is the specific plaque hypothesis. Okay. So for this one, it says here that only a few specific species of bacteria are actively involved in the disease. So there are only specific species of bacteria that are involved in the disease process. So yeah, okay, we have several bacteria present in plaque. However, there are only specific bacteria that are responsible for causing this disease. Okay, that's your specific plaque hypothesis. So they mentioned that destruction is site-specific. So it doesn't mean that there's plaque here, there would be a disease here. You need to have a specific group of bacteria that would be causing the destruction. Okay, that's what it says. So for the specific plaque hypothesis, the focus is on the quality of plaque. It's not the quantity, just like your non-specific. Okay, still with me. Naintindihan niyo pa? Okay? In non-specific, it's a quantity. No matter what the composition is, as long as there's plaque, there would be a disease. But in specific plaque hypothesis, it's the quality. We need specific species of bacteria to cause the disease. Okay? Next is your virulent clonal theory. This is by Sokransky and Haffagy. Sokransky and Haffagy. Okay? So, virulent clonal theory, it says here that specific or the presence of pathogen is not enough to cause the disease. Sabi niya, okay, sige. You have a point. Sabi niya kay specific plaque hypothesis. Okay, you have a point. We need specific species to cause the disease. But in virulent clonal theory, it says here that the presence of the specific pathogens is not enough to cause the disease. Okay. We need to have the specific strain of bacteria. That's what it says. Okay. We need to have the highly virulent strain or clone of bacteria for you to have the disease. Because, yes, AA, okay, is a type of bacteria, but we need to have a specific type of AA, a specific strain of AA that would cause the disease. Okay, that's what virulent clonal theory means. Okay, mas naging more specific siya compared to this one. Okay, compared to this specific plaque hypothesis. That's why they are saying dentistry changes, di ba? Actually, it's very difficult to teach dentistry, specifically some subjects like perio, because it constantly changes. Okay? It constantly changes. Unlike anatomy, diba? Anatomy, at first it's difficult to teach it, pero over time, it's the same. Diba? It's the same. Hindi naman tayo nag-evolve agad, diba? Next year, meron tayo pakpak, we have wings, okay? It's the same origin, insertion, action, innervation. Diba? But in terms of dentistry, it constantly changes, okay? That's why you have to update, okay? The book also changes, okay? So for this one, it started with the quantity of plaque, then the quality of plaque, then strain, specific strain of bacteria, okay? So basically, the focus of your virulent clonal theory is on the strain, is on the strain level pathogenicity. Okay? Strain level pathogenicity. Pinapa-discuss niya eh. O sige na nga, discuss na natin. So we have discussed already virulent, non-specific, and specific plaque hypothesis. We have here nucleation theory and inhibition theory. These are just some of the theories on calculus formation. Okay, theory on calculus formation. There are others. You have your carbon dioxide tension theory. You have your Buser mechanism theory. Okay, that we'll just discuss. Sige, sulat ka na rin. Or you can search later. Carbon dioxide tension theory. Buser mechanism theory. Okay. So nucleation theory, the organic matrix of plaque acts as a seeding agent for crystallization. Okay. While inhibition theory says here that plaque has microorganisms that produce pyrophosphatase. Pyrophosphatase. Okay, that's your nucleation and inhibition theory. Okay, calculus crystalline form of subgingival calcular deposit. So we've mentioned this already yesterday. Okay, subgingival deposit, ano yung crystalline form of the calculus? Brushite, octacalcium phosphate, hydroxyapatite with loctite. The answer is letter D, with loctite. Okay. So sige na nga, drawing natin. We have a tooth here. Bone. Calculus. Kapalan natin ha. Let's make it thick. Okay. And you have your gingiva. Okay. So supragingival, you have brushite. Okay. Subgingival with loctite. Exterior area, octacalcium. Inner layer, hydroxyapatite. Okay. So remember this picture. Let's say in the board exam, you're asked, you can easily identify him. BOWH. Supragingival, subgingival, outer layer, inner layer. Okay. Brushite, octacalcium with loctite, hydroxyapatite. Okay. So it's that mas madali siyang i-remember now. Okay. So if you're trying to remember something, try nyo i-drawing. So it's better. Okay. So supragingival calcular deposit and subgingival calcular deposit, we have differentiated already yesterday. Supragingival calculus is whitish to dark yellow. Subgingival is brownish, brownish black because of the blood. Okay, it's porous, it absorbs the blood. Number 20. Which of the following represents the main objective of the maintenance phase periodontal therapy? Main objective of your maintenance phase. Parang natanong na to yesterday. So to prevent recurrence of the disease. Okay? Prevent recurrence of the disease. Do you have any questions so far? None. We'll have a short break. Okay? We'll have a short break. Then we'll be discussing the rest of the items. After the break, we have 40 items for this item analysis. It's now 9:26. Be back in 15 minutes. Okay. To 30, 40, 9:40. Okay. 9:40. Miss Mekalia, are you here? Miss Mekalia, I need to talk to you after, ha? I need to talk to you later, Miss Mekalia.
Yes po, Doc.
Okay. So be back by 9:40. Thank you.